Good afternoon, Future Gen. I'm just getting home, and I thought I'd send this last installment to the theme of the month. Chiropractors, the original Quacks. It's day 5. The title of this one is Commitment to Honor, commitment at the highest level to honor those that came before you. And to me, this is important because, well, I guess to recap the week, on Monday, we went over why did chiropractors go to jail basically up into the 1970s or so, and what we kind of figured out was that we didn't go to jail because we just wanted a natural therapy for pain, right? We went to jail because there's a deeply rooted principle in what we do that is vastly different than what conventional medicine does, and even a lot of natural medicine too, right? On Tuesday, we went through what we do in our office clinically and why we're unique, right? And why we do things. We commit to certain levels of excellence, especially in our clinical metrics and outcomes, and especially tracking progress, because we want to know very clearly and be transparent with our patients, like how they're doing, not only in their symptoms and how they're feeling, but also how they're functioning, right? Number 3, on Wednesday, we went through the brain-body diagram. If you haven't seen that one I got a little bit nerdy on that one. And so if you have any idea or have any perspectives on, or any questions about why mind-body medicine or natural healing and things like that actually work, if you watch that video, you'll actually understand at a very deep level the basics behind cause and effect in terms of how physiology presents. And then yesterday we talked a lot about Herbert Ross Reaver, the most highly jailed chiropractor, and he was like 70 years in the profession. I'm at 8.5. I got a long way to go, but today is about honoring people like him, people who have a lot of respects sacrificed so much just to give us the opportunity to practice. I don't consider myself super young in practice anymore, and we just hired our first associate, who I've talked about before, Dr. Caitlin. She's amazing, and it's wild to see just how disconnected we are as a younger generation in chiropractic in people like Herbert Ross Reaver, who actually went to jail something, or chiropractors in general were prosecuted 15,000 times, and there were only 12,000 chiropractors up until the 1930s or so. And so to me, this module, or this session, is about commitment at the highest level to honor those who came before you. And to me, this means honoring my parents and honoring my grandparents. And I don't know if I talked about this in a previous video, but I learned after I started to specialize in prenatal and pediatric chiropractic care and working on preconception arms of our practice now, and I learned later that my grandma was a doula, and I learned even further that my 2 grandaunts were midwives. And so when a lot of our patients are like, hey, you're really good with kids, and I had no idea, and my mom's considered the baby whisperer too, I had no idea that I had that in kind of like our genes, right? We had that in our epigenome, I guess we should say. But why is this important? This is important because no one gets anywhere alone, right? It's really important to recognize that so many things have to happen just to get you here and now, right? An infinite, actually an unfathomable number of things that actually have to get you to here and now. And one of the things that I love, that one of my probably my guides since I think my freshman year at West Point, I read a book titled Ethics for a New Millennium. It was written by the Dalai Lama. It was the first time I had ever read any of his work, and I've since read dozens of his books and have followed him very closely. And when I read it, I was like, man, this is like the words of like what my grandparents were trying to teach me in terms of being a good person and actually like kind of living a life of honor and things like that. But he says that we all have a commonality, and the commonality is that we all make it onto the planet the same way, and that same way is through the love and compassion of the gestational period of pregnancy that our moms all gave to us, right? And I can't tell you how much that impacts me today, watching so many moms navigate this transformational stage from woman to mother, sometimes the first time, and now we're seeing moms all the way through their third pregnancies, and we're just so blessed to see families grow and how they actually do. And the lesson in all this is, as Victoria and I, my fiance, we're getting married in 2 months, and we're getting a lot of RSVPs. We're having a small ceremony, actually a private ceremony, but we're having a small reception afterwards. And one of the things that I've become very attuned to is just my roots and where we come from. And one of the things that I know that I'm going to do, and I keep pushing my mom for this, is I want to sit down with my mother and her parents. My dad's parents aren't alive anymore. But I've investigated a lot of that arm in my family, which comes from China. My mom's side comes from Taiwan, and my grandpa doesn't actually speak English, and I don't speak Taiwanese, and so I don't have that connection to that generation. But my grandparents, who on the blog, if you haven't seen that yet for this month, my great-grandparent, there's a picture of my great-grandparents, and if you look at 3 generations beyond, or behind, like backwards in my family, I mean, they look like it could be a museum, right? It looks like a photo that could be in a museum, and that it's one of those things where they look like the long kind of Fu Manchu facial hair, like big kind of kimono type robes. It was Japan controlled Taiwan at the time, and then actual malas, right? Like meditation malas. And so it's a completely different lifetime from 3 generations ago. And to me, this is important because one of the things that I want to do in the time between now and our wedding is that I would love to actually spend the time and have the conversation with my grandparents, who took 4 of their kids. Like my mom was saying earlier the week, like my niece was super proud that one of her like the moms and their group of friends took 3 of them to the safari park, and it was a huge accomplishment, which it is, right? In this day and age, it is wild to have 3 kids in a public place like that, right? In the 1960s, when my grandparents emigrated with my aunts and uncles and my mom from Taiwan via boat to Japan, via boat to Brazil, and then to California. That process took a year, but they had 4 kids, right? And the lesson for me is that I don't really know acutely, like, actually why they did that and what the whole reason is behind that, because it's a massive journey. And I could understand that China was taking over Taiwan, and I have these understandings of what historically was happening. I do understand the difference in culture between mainland China and Taiwan. But for me, it's something that I want to hear firsthand, because what I know as far as like the lesson in all this is they didn't move and emigrate all that distance, all that time, and all that risk on boats with 4 kids, all under the age, I think under 13 or 12, and my youngest uncle was probably around 7 or 8. I don't think they did it for me to live like a life of like this much meaning, right? I believe that they did it so that we could, one, have an opportunity, but they would live, like they would bring the possibilities up to a higher level so that we could stand on those shoulders and actually maybe even for future generations, which is why we call our practice future generations, we would actually have the ability to have the next generations of societies always having a greater vision for humanity and always doing more inspiring and impactful things. So in the end, the question is, where in your world can you honor your ancestors, right? And those who kind of came before you, whatever profession you're in. Maybe it's a professional thing, maybe it's a family thing, maybe it's, like for me, it's chiropractic, right? How do I live and how do I practice in a way that honors those that actually sacrificed, their freedom? And honestly, it's not just about pain, and it can't be. It's not that I don't care about symptoms, and it's not that I don't care about, that kind of suffering per se, but we just don't stop there, right? When we see patients in our practice, we do a health history, and I can't not shut off where this person will be in 20 years. Because if 85% of our adults right now have chronic illness, and we have 54% of our kids that have chronic illness, and that train isn't actually getting better, it's actually continually getting worse. And if you look at Robert F. Kennedy, if you look at Del Bigtree, if you look at a lot of these major players in the natural health movement in terms of health freedom, you start to realize that this epidemic is actually skyrocketing. And it is a huge commitment of our practice. We tell every single one of our patients, every single one when we go through our reports, not only the statistics, but our ruthless commitment to shifting the trajectory, not only of that one patient in in our families right now, but absolutely in the future generations as they actually grow their family. We want to always continually consider not only their choices today, but how those choices echo down. And choosing to be in an office like ours is absolutely a different life experience that should not only halt disease processes and actually reverse and restore the health that actually every human being on the planet was born with. And so thank you for joining me for these 5 sessions. I know they went a little bit longer than I expected. They weren't as long as the ones we did in Maine. And next month, what I want you to do next is, 1, share this video. 2, I'd love for you to pay very close attention to Monday when our newsletter comes out. Our next theme is titled You Create Your Own Reality, and the blog, the video log, and then the live sessions that will come along with it. Please tune in. We're getting really, really vocal and really excited about not only the perspectives that we have in our practice, but also how we deliver them, and really appreciate you tuning in. Thank you so much, and have an awesome weekend.